In my opinion, Riki is the strongest support right now. Okay, that sounds a bit hyperbolic, so let me explain. Riki's support has come and gone throughout the recent patches, ever since they added his shard, the dagger, the sleeping dart. But recently, while watching a Dubu stream, I heard him talk a bit about this Riki support.
So this is a game that there's no business for me to winning this game, but I won. Truly because of how broken this hero is. Look at my stat. But I just played this. This is straight up broken.
At the time of recording this, Riki is the 9th most popular position 5 at the pro pub level and the 12th most popular position 4. Now, those aren't great numbers by any means, but they are pretty quickly rising, and there's a reason for that. Besides his main supporting abilities, the dart and the AoE silence being strong as usual, his entire toolkit just feels very natural and unique right now. Now, the reason I'm making this video is because no one is picking Riki support below the pro level. He's the 37th most picked post 4/post 5, which is incredibly low for a hero that the Immortals value so highly right now. So let's get into how you can stomp your pubs with Riki support. Okay, so before we get into the actual specifics, I want to talk about a thought that I had when I started looking into Riki support, and that you might have as well right now, which is Riki support works apparently great at the high level, the really 12k MMR high level, but is it really as good at the lower MMRs? Like, your dart setup, is anyone actually gonna use that? And your silence, you can't really carry in the same way as you can with other supports. I think there is some truth to that, but in my experience, if you are extremely overperforming, if you're way beyond everyone else's level, it doesn't matter at all. With Riki, you can even go a Diffusal Manta hard fucking carry build if you have the game for it. I don't recommend it, and it's usually incredibly bad, but if you have a strong sense of I'm smurfing, I should be 10 ranks above the rank I am currently, then just fucking go a more greedy build. But from my experience, that isn't even necessary. Just going the standard Riki support build will have a huge impact, even if your team is uncoordinated and you feel like there isn't any point to having these setups and these AoE controls. With that being said, let's talk about how do you actually win with Riki. So, okay, I'm just quickly gonna talk about the item, skill build, etc. So, items, starting items, there is a usual build with Orb of Venom, Tango, 2 branches and a sentry. But you can add in some shit to that, you have a bit of extra gold. You can go a little bit of whatever you want for starting items. You can get a Fairy Fire, a Mango, or even Wraithband components if you're feeling really greedy. For skill build, you always wanna level Blink wherever you can. This is a must, every pro does this. And of course you're gonna level your ult at every level. But when it comes to filling up the rest of the slots, the usual build is getting 1 point in Tricks of Trade, usually level 2, but if you feel like you have a high kill potential, you can get it at level 4 as well. You get 1 skill point into Tricks of Trade, and then you just pump the rest into the silence. When it comes to the talents, you want to go the right talent, the left talent, and then usually the right talent. Of course, there is some variation here, you can mix it up at pretty much all levels, but this is the skill build that is the most common by far. You can again mix it up, but I'm personally not even gonna think about it too much, because what you need to think about is how you actually play. So let's talk about the laning stage. One misconception that I personally had about the Riki support was that his lane was dog shit. And hear me out, okay, I feel like you might think that as well, and it's partially true. Like, he's not a very strong laner. If you compare him to other common laners like Rubik, Skywrath, Hoodwink, Enchantress, you start to notice that, okay, he might not have the same amount of damage or disables. But remember, you also need to compare to the supports that don't do as much in the lane, like Warlock or Nyx or, I don't know, that Pudge that is sitting behind your trees and doing nothing for 5 minutes. Using your blink to advance and attack them and harass them and slow them, and then if shit hits the fan you can just blink out, is surprisingly strong. There is a reason that you pick up Orb of Venom for starting items, because at level 1 you're actually gonna win trades against other support, especially if you factor in the fact that your offlaner or hard carry can join since the enemy support is super slowed. During the laning stage you want to get boot and wand, usually in that order, but you can mix it up if you feel like it's a strong wand lane, for example against Skywrath Mage. But listen up, okay, this is the most important part of Riki support, and that is you need to get the shard at 15 minutes. Not 16, not 17, not 20, you need to get it at 15. It might feel very tempting to go for the arcane boots before the shard, but don't, just make sure that you get the shard, it's incredibly important. That's because in the mid game you will have 3 focuses. Number 1 is don't die. Okay, this sounds pretty self-evident, of course you never want to die on any kind of support, but with Riki you have the advantage that you basically cannot die at lower MMRs. Of course if you're super high MMR then things might change, but from my experience even when watching super high level Riki support pubs, they usually have quite low deaths even in losing games. And that is simply because your blink and your invisibility are insanely strong as support. Even using the tricks of trade to get off cliffs or move around can be incredibly helpful, even dodging spells. So basically what I'm trying to say is that you have 0 excuses for dying. This can be a bit mentally challenging for some, including myself, but it's also very nice because when you do replay analysis of your games later, it's very clear what the mistake was when you died. Because if you play correctly, if you play around your wards and you ward correctly, then you should be next to impossible to kill. It should be incredibly hard, even without any supportive items like Force Staff or Glimmer Cape. But the second priority in the mid game when you're playing Riki is to hit your darts. This is the main appeal of Riki support, and that is simply because it has so many different uses. You can set up an easy kill on the enemy support or a weak mid, like let's say an invoker, which is of course very nice, that's what most people do with the sleeping dart. It does a little bit of damage when it ends, but most importantly it just sets up for other spells like hooks and light strike array, etc. But the use that I feel is way more used in professional pubs is using the dart as a Bane sleep. You basically target usually the enemy offlaner or whatever hero on the enemy team that you either wanna ignore or is simply too strong to deal with. The sleep is surprisingly long in teamfights. If you get a good sleep on the enemy Tidehunter or Bristleback or something like that, it will make every fight so much easier. And you might be saying, oh, how am I gonna set this up? You're invisible. It's a lot easier when the enemy can't see you. And remember, even if you place wards, shoot your dart, place your silence, etc., the enemy can't see you. The invis is only broken when you right click, which is again very strong. I've even seen examples of pro games where a team completely loses a fight, the team that Riki is on, but he just stays there because he sees that the enemy doesn't have any vision. So he can just stay and dart like next to the enemy because they are never gonna be able to catch him. The third thing to focus on that has helped me the most is to keep your silence off cooldown. In fights, try to just place it down as much as possible. It has a pretty good uptime, and that means that if you have it down, it's gonna be an area that the enemy basically can't fight in. Because remember, it's not only a silence, it's also basically a disarm. The enemy can of course use BKB and shit, but you kinda need to think of it as a tiny disruptor ult. Of course, there are always exceptions to the rule. If you're playing against something like a Pudge without BKB, or a Bane, or some other hero with channeling abilities or important combos that you need to stop, then I would recommend saving the silence and using the dart. The silence is basically instant, while the dart has some travel time, and it's a lot more finicky to set up the dart in my experience. When it comes to the late game, I think there is only really one priority left to keep in mind, and that is When it comes to the late game, I think there should be only one thing on your mind, and that is staying alive. Of course, that kinda goes with all the support heroes, all the heroes in Dota in fact. But I think there is a very concrete case to look at with Riki. Are you gonna go in melee range of the enemy, or are you gonna stay the fuck away? In the late game, you should most likely not pretty much ever go in melee range with Riki support. Of course, if you're chasing the enemy or winning the fight, you can do whatever you want. But if the fight is looking even, or if you're not sure, then stay the fuck away. Be super careful. Remember, you're a lot more valuable as something annoying that enemy is trying to chase and kill, compared to a right clicker that's doing 100 damage a second on the enemy support. Like, the support is not gonna die. Again, there are some exceptions if you have like a diff and manta and are completely destroying the game, but those are edge cases, those rarely happen. When it comes to the items after shard, you most likely want to get arcane boots, but after that there is quite a lot of variety. You can get Aetherlens, Lotus, Force Staff, Octarine, a Spirit Vessel. This is a place where you can actually be a bit creative and try to adapt to the game. And remember, you are playing Riki support, you can take pretty aggressive farm if it's a very defensive game, which means that usually you can build some net worth, and you don't really need any items after your shard and arcane boot, which means that you can even go for more expensive shit like a Wraith Pact or some aura items that your team really needs. There is a lot of space for adaptability. But that's it, I just wanted to share this. I think it's incredibly strong right now, it's incredibly fun, and yeah, I just wanted to share it. I hope you enjoyed watching. Bye bye.